The night was meant to be average. I was at home, scrolling through stations, half watching a crime show while sipping a beer. The house was too quiet. She should have arrived home by now. She sent a text around an hour ago. Love you. Ashley and I are having one final drink. Then I'll take Uber home. That occurred at 10:47 p.m. It was now beyond midnight. No texts or calls. And then a peculiar feeling settled into my gut. One that I couldn't shake. I was not the jealous kind. I never checked her phone or questioned her when she went out. But something about tonight seemed odd. She had been dressing up more recently, worrying too much about her looks, even on casual outings. Before going on errands, apply perfume, lingerie sets. She never dressed for me. A sudden demand for space. It's all small stuff. But when you put them together, they created an image that I was not prepared to face. Then my phone vibrated. An unknown number. I paused, then responded. Hello? Silence. Then a man's voice quieted, almost urgent. I don't know you, but I felt you should know. Your wife is at the Marriott on 5th, room 1327. She is not alone. The call went dead. I sat there clutching my phone, my heart pounding against my ribs. My mind refused to comprehend the words. She is not alone. A prank. An error. A horrible joke. I needed proof. I had to see it with my own eyes. I grabbed my keys and walked out. The drive to the Marriott seemed strange. My fingers tingle with each passing mile. I parked across the street and stared at the towering building. Its windows shine at night. I could turn back. I could pretend I never received the call. But something in me, some dark, primitive part, demanded to know. Inside, the foyer was sleek and polished. A place where people smiled too much and spoke in quiet tones. I strolled by the front desk and headed straight for the elevator. There is no hesitancy, no fear, just cold, burning certainty. Floor 13, room 1327. I did not knock. I did not offer her that caution. I wanted the truth, raw and unfiltered. So I grabbed the handle and pushed open the door. And there she was. My wife is my best buddy, half-dressed, tangled sheets. Their bodies are too familiar. There are no excuses left. There are no lies to hide behind. Her eyes widened with shock. The mouth opens as if to speak something, but I talked first. Don't say anything. And then the real fun started. She froze and clutched the sheet to her chest, as if it could protect her from what was happening. My best friend, Ryan, sat up too quickly. His face had lost its color. He looked like a youngster who had been caught stealing. Except, this was not a candy bar. This was my wife for a little moment. Neither of us spoke. The stillness was oppressive, heavy with panic, guilt, and something else. Something made my blood boil. She was not scared. She wasn't apologizing. These are her first words. This is not an apology. Not an explanation. She rolled her eyes. You're being dramatic. Dramatic. My vision turned crimson. Ryan jumped out of bed, fumbling for his jeans like a weak scoundrel in a lousy movie. Listen, man. He started raising his hands as if I were holding a gun to his head. Shut up! I cut him off. I wasn't buying his reasons. I turned back to face her. The woman I had made a life with. The woman I believed I knew. She had the arrogance to appear irritated, as if I was ruining her night. I was about to tell you. She sighed, as if this were a trivial nuisance. It was as if I had walked in on her, painting the walls the incorrect color rather than screwing my closest friend, when I snapped before or after you brought him into our bed. Ryan flinched. She simply shrugged. Shrugged. You wouldn't understand, she murmured, throwing her hair over her shoulder. I was fully aware of how much she annoyed me. It's just happened. It's just happened. That's what they always say, right? As if their garments had mysteriously fallen off, like hotel rooms appeared out of thin air. Months of sneaking around seemed like an accident. I chuckled, since it was all so ridiculous. Yes, I said. So, if I punch off his teeth right now, it will just happen. 2. Ryan seemed afraid. Good. She had the arrogance to scoff. Oh, grow up. You are well aware that you were never really intriguing. Ryan really makes me feel something. My gut wrenched, but I didn't let it show. I had walked in on my wife and my best friend, and she was blaming me. I should have gone away. I should have left them in their dirt. But no, I had a better strategy. I approached Ryan, seeing him shrink back like a coward. Does your wife know? I inquired, my voice quiet to calm. His breath caught. I saw it. A flash of genuine terror. And then I smiled. Ryan's whole face altered. That phony guilt, those lame excuses are gone. Now, it was sheer, unadulterated fear, because he understood just what I meant. His wife, Emily. I could see the gears in his head churning, seeking for an escape route, deciding whether to plead, lie, or leave. But he realized there was no way out of this. She, on the other hand, had the courage to laugh. A brief, harsh laugh, as if I'd just given the stupidest joke in the world. "Oh, please," she repeated, rolling her eyes. "Again? You won't tell her you're too kind for that." Nice. That word hung in my chest like a rock. That was her opinion of me. That I was too polite to do anything. That I just swallowed it like a nice little husband and let them screw around behind my back. Ryan must have believed it as well, since the coward eventually spoke up. "Look at me, guy." I did not let him finish. I just grabbed out my phone and dialed. I'd never seen a man get so pale so quickly. Wait, too late. Emily picked up on the second ring. "Hello, babe." Her voice was bright, friendly, and totally unaware. "Is everything okay?" Ryan's eyes virtually bulged out of his head. He shook his head, desperately mouthing, "Don't, please, man. Don't." But I was no longer kind. "Hello, Emily." I spoke in a smooth, steady, calm tone. "I believe you should come down to the Marriott on 5th, room 1327. Your spouse and my wife have something to tell you." Silence. "Then I don't comprehend. What are you? Simply get here." I hung up. Ryan grabbed my arm as if he had the right to touch me. "Dude, you don't need to do this." His voice shook. "You don't know what this will do." "What will it do?" I repeated, pushing him off of me. "Like what you did to my marriage. Welcome to my life." I gave out a breathless laugh. "No, Ryan, you are not allowed to be terrified. Not yet. My wife is a cheater with no soul." Finally, a troubled expression appeared. Not guilty, not ashamed. I was just concerned that things might get messy. And she was correct. Because of this. This was only the beginning. Ryan began pacing. His hands raked over his hair. His breathing was fast and uneven. "You don't have to do this, man," he repeated. Voice is lower, almost plaintive. But I stopped listening to him. My emphasis was on her. She tightened the covers around herself, but not out of shame. No, she did not feel ashamed. She was calculating, trying to figure out how she could twist this, use it to her advantage, and negotiate her way out, as she usually did. I saw it in her eyes. Then she breathed, tilted her head, and did precisely as I expected. "You are exaggerating this situation." Very out of proportion. I actually grinned, not because I found it humorous, but because it was so damned predictable. I stepped closer, leaning down until I was at her eye level. "You were screwing my closest friend in a hotel room." My voice was calm and almost compassionate. "Please help me out here. What is the proper proportion for that?" Her jaw clenched. I could see she was annoyed that I wasn't losing my cool, screaming, or throwing things. She wanted me to erupt so she could become the victim. She could twist it into, "Oh, he's nuts. He overreacted." But I was not playing that game. A knock on the door. Emily Ryan actually flinched as if he had been shot. His gaze darted between me and the door. His entire body tightened, as if he was preparing to flee. It is too late for that. I took a step back and waved toward the door. "Go on." I told him to let her in. He wouldn't move, so I did it myself. Emily stood there. Her blonde hair was still somewhat moist from the shower, and she was wearing one of her favorite big sweaters. She smiled at first, but then peered behind me to see them. "Did you see him? Did you see her?" She did not move, did not take a breath, just gazed. I witnessed the exact moment when everything fell apart for her. Her eyes flickered with confusion, then recognition, and finally genuine, gut-wrenching betrayal. "Ryan." Her voice was small and weak, as if she were still hoping. I hope this was a sick misunderstanding. Ryan opened his mouth, but nothing came out. He just stood there, looking like the guilty, sad coward he was. Then Emily turned to me. Tell me it isn't what it seems. I did not. I didn't need to because she already understood. Her hands trembled as she stepped inside, shaking her head. How long? She whispered. Ryan eventually spoke, his voice hoarse. Babe, listen to me. How long? Silence. Then her. Does it really matter? My wife. Her tone was frustrated, as if we were the ones creating a drama. This isn't your business, Emily. Emily genuinely gave a short, bitter laugh. I could see she was breaking. Oh my God, she breathed. You are actually a monster. My wife rolled her eyes again. Oh, get over yourself. We did not kill anyone. Emily's face twisted. You destroyed our marriage. That's when she began crying. Not too loud, not a mess. Simply silence, devastated. Tears. Ryan has finally relocated. She reaches for her kid. I am sorry. Emily hit him hard. The sound reverberated through the room, sharp and brutal. Ryan lurched back, gripping his cheek and gazing wide. And for the first time that night, I noticed genuine regret on his face. Not for what he did, but because he had lost. Emily turned to face me and stated the following. That's when the actual plot began. Let us destroy them. I smiled. The moment Emily said that, I realized she wasn't just angry. She craved blood. Ryan and my wife had been trapped in their selfish little world, assuming we simply cry, shout, and possibly throw a few items before leaving them to enjoy their filthy little affair in peace. They had no idea what was coming. Ryan recovered first. He took a step towards Emily. Hands raised as if he could still fix this infant. Let's just head home. And home. Emily gave a sharp, bitter laugh. You think you're going to come home with me? Ryan flinched. My wife. This cold, manipulative lady I'd spent years loving was loudly scratching her temples, as if we were the issue. This is exhausting, she grumbled. It's not like we intended for you to find out. Like this. I turned to face her. Oh, and when were you going to tell me, before or after I discovered you were F? I stopped myself. Not worth it. She didn't even have the courtesy to appear guilty. I do not know. Okay, let's be honest. Our marriage was already dead. This just accelerated everything. Emily scoffed. Wow. So screwing my husband was justified. My wife smirked at the efficiency of the situation. Smirk? Ryan stared at her, then really looked at her, and I noticed a glint of doubt in his eyes. Maybe for the first time, he realized what kind of lady he had abandoned everything for. Too late. I turned to Emily. Do you wish to destroy them? She nodded. So I took a step forward, close enough that Ryan could see something was coming. And then I dropped the bombshell. You know, Ryan, it's funny, I replied, studying his throat. Bob swallowed hard. Your wife is expecting both your child and mine. I paused and then smiled. She is expecting my silence. Emily's head swung toward me, and Ryan's entire body tensed up. My wife, who had been so haughty and disdainful, became utterly still. I let everything sink in, allowing reality to hit them in the face, in the same manner that I wanted to slap Ryan the instant I stepped through the door. Then I turned to Emily and said, I suppose I should have told you sooner. Her lips separated. Her expression was a storm of perplexity and awareness, but I kept going. I found out a week ago, I remarked casually, my gaze shifting to my wife. She did not tell me, of course. She was too busy creeping around. But I noticed the prenatal vitamins. A doctor's note. She is pregnant. Ryan turned to her, his voice shaking. You and I chimed in. My smile widens. Emily, too. Oh. My wife's mouth eventually opened, but nothing came out. She had lost control of the situation and was aware of it. Ryan appeared to have lost his soul. Emily. She was staring at me, as if she were trying to figure out if this was a cruel joke. Did you know? She said quietly. And you did not tell me. I exhaled. I wanted to make sure. Now I am. Ryan abruptly turned against my wife, his mistress, and his great love. How do I know it is mine? He blurted out, his voice harsh and panicked. You've been lying to your hubby the entire time. How do I know you didn't screw anyone else? My wife's face twisted with wrath. Oh, don't dare! What? You think I'll just take your word for it? He gave out a dry laugh, backing back from her as if she was contagious, as if he had finally recognized who she truly was. And for the first time that night, I saw something completely unexpected. My wife panicked. She reached for him. Ryan, come on. You understand. What we have is real. He pulled his arm away. Do I? His voice was suddenly frigid, distant, because you didn't appear distraught when your husband walked in. Emily turned to face me. So you've known all along and have only now admitted it? I met her gaze. Be steady and calm. Why waste a nice twist? Ryan expelled a quick breath. Hands are on his head. This is ridiculous. Emily was still looking at me. What should we do now? I grinned now. We completely destroyed everything. Ryan appeared to be about to get sick. He kept opening his mouth as if to say something, but nothing came out. My wife, on the other hand, was in complete damage control mode. She dropped the act. No more eye rolls or arrogant little smirks. She was now desperate. She turned to face me first. Wrong move. Look, let's not do anything drastic, she continued, her voice suddenly gentle and almost soothing, the same tone she used to control me. We can discuss this like adults. I simply stared at her. Then I laughed. Not because it was humorous, because it was pathetic conversation. I repeated, I like how you spoke when you were screwing my best friend behind my back. Her eyes darkened, but Emily intervened before she could snap at me. No, let her speak. Emily spoke sharply. She crossed her arms and tilted her head toward my wife, as if she were some sort of fascinating science experiment. I would want to hear her explanation. Ryan eventually snapped out of his disbelief. Babe, please let us go home. He spoke to Emily, reaching for her again. She smacked his hand away quickly, causing him to flinch. Do not touch me. My wife then turned to Ryan, as she would naturally. When she realized she couldn't manipulate me anymore, she went on to the next target. Do you believe me? She said with a hushed voice. Sweet. Fake. You know I adore you. Ryan seemed to hesitate, and I noticed it. Hesitate. That was the moment I realized he was even weaker than I believed. But Emily. Emily had finished playing nicely. Are you really falling for this? She spoke, staring at Ryan as if he were the dumbest man on the planet. Do you believe she cares about you? Ryan clenched his jaw. You do not know what we have. Emily laughed repeatedly, and there was something deadly about it. Oh, you poor moron, she said. Ryan bristled. Emily, no, you don't get to speak, she snapped. I've spent years becoming the ideal wife. I loved you. I trusted you. And the entire time you were running around with her, my wife sighed loudly. Rolling her eyes again, she returned to her normal self, now that she believed Ryan was on her side. God, you're acting as if he murdered someone. Emily's face became stone cold. She said you were carrying his baby. And then she gave a slow, menacing smile. That means you can explain it to him when he pays child support for both of us. That made my wife's smirk disappear. Ryan stiffened. What? Emily turned to face me. We are keeping the infants. Ryan paled. My wife has stopped breathing. I nodded. Damn right we are. My wife's mouth opened, closed, and then opened again. That's not right. That is not your decision to make. Emily shrugged. Nope, but I made it. She patted her stomach. Her eyes locked on Ryan. You're going to become a parent, honey. I hope you're ready. Ryan appeared to be close to pass out. I cannot afford to. Yes, you should have considered that before placing your D. Emily stopped herself and took a long breath. You know what? I don't care. I hope you suffer. Ryan glanced to my wife, as if she could cure this. She could not. Now she was in a panic. Wait, we can work it out. Emily grabbed her purse. Oh, I have already worked it out. She turned to face me. Are you coming? I did not even hesitate. Absolute. I turned to see my wife one last time. Get your belongings out of the house before tomorrow, or I will burn them. Ryan opened his mouth to argue, But Emily and I were already walking out the door, and as we left them standing in the ruins of their own demise, I understood something. Emily and I were just getting started. We walked out of the motel room, leaving them to drown in their own filth. Emily breathed deeply and shakily. As soon as we entered the elevator, I waited. Then, without warning, she laughed, and it wasn't a joyful laugh. Not relieved, unhinged. I gazed at her. "You okay?" She turned to face me. I'm still wet, but burning with something else. Rage. Determination. Something crisp and electrifying. "Oh, I am better than good," she replied, a wild grin spreading across her face. I simply realized I have nothing more to lose. I knew right then that we were going to ruin them. The drive back was quiet, tight, and charged. Emily sat in the passenger seat, peering out the window and chewing on her thumb. I could tell her thoughts were racing. I finally spoke, breaking the silence. "What is the plan?" She gently turned to face me, then grinned. "First, we make them regret every single decision they have ever made. The next morning, I sent my wife the shortest text possible. Your belongings are on the lawn. If they are still present by noon, the garbage truck will collect them." Her reaction arrived within minutes. "Are you serious?" No apologies, no attempt to make things right, just sheer selfish fury. I ignored her. Emily, on the other hand, was already working on something larger, Ryan's greatest fear. She inquired over coffee. Being exposed. He constructed his entire image around being a family man. "That's why he's more worried than your wife." I nodded. "That makes sense. He was extremely concerned about how others saw him." Emily smirked. "Then let's ensure that everyone sees him precisely as he is." She got out her phone and began typing. And that's how it began. Texts, calls, and silent surgical strikes ripped their lives apart. First, the family. Emily sent messages to Ryan's parents, siblings, and boss. "I just thought you should know that Ryan has been cheating on me with his closest friend's wife, and she is now pregnant." Then the pals. Screenshots show a meticulously prepared statement addressed to every mutual friend, coworker, and anybody who ever believed Ryan was a stand-up guy. Then the ultimate blow, a social media post. It was simple, elegant, brutal. A photo of her wedding band, a photo of the pregnancy test, and a one-line congrats to my husband Ryan and his mistress on their new baby. "I wish you both all the happiness you deserve." The internet erupted. Ryan phoned her 11 times. She did not pick up. Instead, we watched his life burn. And my wife? She had no idea what would happen next. By lunchtime, my front yard resembled a thrift store explosion. Suitcases and garbage bags. Loose clothing. Everything belonged to her. I didn't bother to fold anything. Allow her to dig through it like a raccoon if she want. She didn't show up immediately. She was too proud for that. But I knew she would arrive. She had nowhere else to go. While I waited, I kept an eye on my phone. Emily's post had gone viral. Thousands of reactions. Hundreds of comments. People we barely knew chimed in, providing support. Ryan was torn apart. His family had publicly disowned him. His boss witnessed it. Ryan was done, and he knew it. By 1 p.m., my wife came. She pulled up in her car, parked halfway on the curb like a crazy, and stormed toward the mound of her belongings. There is no shame or guilt, only wrath. She did not acknowledge me at first. She started searching through the mess, mumbling under her breath. I leaned on the porch railing and watched her. "It took you long enough." She whipped around. "Are you serious? You dumped my belongings out here as if I were a stray animal." I shrugged. "Stray animals display greater loyalty." Her jaw clenched. "You are acting insane." I laughed. "Did they actually laugh at me? I claimed you were the one that cheated, lied, and tried to deceive me into believing I was the problem. Now you're upset because I won't let you slide back inside." She crossed her arms. "I have no choice, okay? You were suffocating me." I tilted my head. "Suffocate you?" "Yes." She flung her arms up. "You were boring, predictable, always so safe. I needed something exciting." I breathed and nodded. "I understand it now." She smirked. She assumed I was admitting defeat. Then I spoke again. You are just an unhappy person who requires constant disruption to feel alive. The smirk disappeared. Excuse me. You have heard me. I moved closer and lowered my voice. You cheated because you are emotionally empty. You needed something to distract you from the fact that you are selfish and flawed. And Ryan, I chuckled. You don't love him? He was just starting out, which was exciting. And that rush is fading, isn't it? Her fingers had curled into fists. You're not sure what you're talking about. Oh, yes, I do. I grinned because Ryan was leaving you. Her face plummeted. Bullseye. I got out my phone and held it up so she could see the message Emily had forwarded to me. Ryan, I cannot do this. I made an error. I need to work things out with Emily, my wife. Asterisk. Asterisk. Soon to be ex-wife. Asterisk. Asterisk remained there motionless, looking at the words as if they were written in another language. Then she did precisely what I expected. She grabbed her phone and dialed his number, which went to voicemail. She tried again. Voicemail. Again? Voicemail. I could see panic setting in. She didn't have control anymore. She had destroyed all bridges, and now she was drowning. I leaned in. How's that for excitement? She turned to me, her eyes burning. Do you think you've won? I grinned. I know I did. She opened her mouth again, but I raised a hand. Save it, I said. Take your stuff. Get off my property, and do not contact me ever again. She shook her head and laughed angrily. You're going to regret this. I took a big breath, letting the weight of everything leave me. No, I replied simply. I will not. Then I turned and marched inside, slamming the door in her face. When I locked the door, a sensation of peace washed over me. She went out for the first time in years. My residence. My life was mine again. No more falsehoods. No more second-guessing myself. No more feeling inadequate for someone who was never truly worth it. Through the window, I saw her stand there, clutching her phone as if she could somehow. So, Ryan, please respond. He would not. Ryan lacked courage. Sure. But even he wasn't stupid enough to stick around now that his entire life had collapsed. She cried loudly, frustrated, powerless. Then she began taking her belongings and pushing them into her car, cursing to herself, as if I were the one who had ruined her life. As if she weren't. The reason she was standing on my front lawn, abandoned, embarrassed, and all alone. I smiled. Perfect. Then I sat down on the couch and grabbed my phone. Emily texted Emily. She's gone. Me? Only about you. Emily. Ryan is losing his sanity, attempting to beg his way back inside. It is hilarious. I leaned back and enjoyed the image. Me? Are you going to take him back? Emily, are you insane? I laughed. Then another text appeared. Emily, come over. I looked at the words for a moment. I'm feeling a shift inside me. Something unexpected. Emily and I had spent the previous 24 hours ruining our lives. We had become partners in destruction, driven by rage, treachery, and the sheer delight of watching them crumble. But now it was just us. And for the first time since this nightmare began, I realized I didn't despise the concept. I grabbed my keys and fled without looking back. Emily's door flung open before I could knock. She stood there barefoot, her hair tied up, and wearing one of those big sweaters that made her look effortlessly beautiful. Not like someone who has just been through hell. More like someone who had been through the fire and emerged stronger. She leaned against the door frame, arms crossed, eyes keen. It took you long enough. I smirked. I needed to be sure she was actually gone. Emily took a moment to study me before stepping aside. Come inside. I did. Her place was warm. I lived in a completely different environment than the cold, sterile home I shared with my wife. Emily, his ex-wife, retreated into the kitchen and returned moments later with 2 glasses and a bottle of whiskey. Drink, she asked. I raised an eyebrow. Celebration or therapy? She smirked. Both. We sat on her sofa, eyeglasses in hand. The weight of things is finally settling in. Anger and betrayal. The previous 24 hours have been total mayhem. It had all added up to something explosive. And now? Now there was only silence. Good quietness. She swirled her glass and watched the whiskey catch the light. Have you ever considered what would have occurred if we found out years later? I exhaled. I try not to. She nodded and took a slow sip. I was planning to spend the rest of my life with him. I firmly believe that. Yeah, I said, peering into my own glass. I agree. There was a silence, and Emily sighed. She stretched her legs out and rested her head against the couch. At least I got something out of it. I looked at her. What is that? She patted her stomach. Ryan, my kid, may be rubbish, but this baby is mine. Nobody can take that from me. I nodded. Same. She turned to face me. Are you planning to be a good father? I met her look with confidence and assurance. Her lips formed a faint smile. Good. Perhaps our children can be buddies. I smirked. Or sworn enemies? Either way, I'm fine with it. She giggled and shook her head. Then her smile dimmed slightly. Have you ever wondered? She paused, fingers touching the rim of her glass. If we'd met under different circumstances, I'd have understood what she meant and not hesitated. Yes, I said I do. Her gaze focused on me. Something unspoken is going between us. Something undeniable. Neither of us moved. Not yet. Because right now, it was not about vengeance. It wasn't about our exes. It was simply two individuals sitting in the aftermath, understanding that perhaps they weren't as broken as they believed, and that was the true beginning. Here's the next story. I've learned over the previous 8 years that being a step-parent isn't easy. For example, I don't mind informing my adult daughter when I believe she has made a mistake. As her father, I have the right and obligation to do so, but I am hesitant to do the same for my stepchildren. And when it comes to my step-grandchildren, I am very cautious about correcting them for doing something I believe is inappropriate. I walk a fine line, which is sometimes uncomfortable. So when it came to my attention that my stepdaughter-in-law might be cheating on her husband, I was perplexed. My name is Patrick Pat Hansen. My wife Jenny and I have been married 8 years. This is our second marriage. However, our connection has lasted more than 30 years. We dated for a few months in high school before we parted ways. We got back together 10 years ago. When my wife and I separated, we had been married for 18 years. It wasn't because any of us cheated. Our finances or our romantic lives. It was due of the barrier surrounding our swimming pool. In all honesty, the quarrel over the fence was merely the last straw in a massive bale of straw. Our connection evolved over time, and we, us and our, gave way to me, my, and I for both of us. So we decided to quit. Our daughter weathered the divorce as well as could be expected and accepted, with 2 houses that eventually became 2 homes. She likes her stepfather and treats him with respect and affection. Likewise, with my wife's stepmother, Jenny. Son and daughter feel the same way about me. At least, I believe they do. My daughter once asked Jenny why we stopped dating in high school, because I refused to put out, whereas Nancy did. My daughter absolutely howled. My first wife and I were separated, and our divorce was still a few weeks away. I was browsing for something online when something absolutely unrelated to my original search showed and reminded me of Jenny, whom I had known so long ago. So I entered her name. I had no idea what her married name was, or if she was even married. So I inputted her maiden name and paired it with her husband's obituary. The obituary even included her phone number, which I found surprising. I called her. The rest, as they say, is history. I am the director of safety for a huge transportation firm. We relocated to New Orleans 5 years ago to assume the position. My profession is demanding, yet it keeps me close to home. Jenny serves on a number of boards for local charities. We are not wealthy, yet we can do almost anything we desire. Her late husband's investments were helpful. See to that. My daughter is single and lives in Cincinnati, Ohio, where she and her mother own a rather successful gift shop. Jenny's daughter resides in Estes Park, Colorado, with her husband, a park ranger, and their 2 kids. Her son, Tyson Ty, lives in Memphis with his 5-year-old wife and works as a manager for a package delivery service. Lauren, Ty's wife is a dental assistant at one of the area's most well-known dentists. They have a 4-year-old daughter named Madge. Jenny and I don't get to visit our children very often, only once or twice a year for a few days. We've seen Ty, Lauren, and Madge a lot more in recent years. It's roughly a 6-hour journey from Memphis, and he appears to have a lot of 3-day weekends, so they go down every few months. Mardi Gras is a fantastic time for them to arrive, and Madge loves to yell, "Throw me something, mister." While watching parades, she has enough beads to buy Manhattan Island again. But for the past year or two, only Ty and Madge have made the trek. Lauren always seemed to be too busy. The same thing happened last summer. Jenny and I took all of our children on a cruise. Everyone made it except Lauren. Ty explained that she couldn't get off work. Jenny and I were to see them again, together with my daughter, in New York City. However, Lauren was once again unable to attend. It was a busy week, and she felt awful about leaving. What was Ty's excuse? "I'm starting to think she dislikes us." It's not that, Pat. I believe she feels the need to be close to work in case an emergency arises. When you prioritize your job over your family, it could be time to look for another work. We never talked about it again, and I never felt close enough to him to truly explore his personal life. And I certainly hadn't discussed it with Jenny, but I was beginning to have some reservations about their marriage. What, if anything, should I do to address those concerns? I've opted to do nothing for the time being. 4 months ago, one of the trucking associations to which my company belongs hosted a conference in Nashville. My supervisor agreed that it would be a good idea for us to be represented, so I scheduled my assistant to attend the seminar 2 days before it began. Her husband had emergency gallbladder surgery, and she was unable to go, so I went. That seems funny. Emergency gallbladder surgery, but I recognize that it isn't amusing to the sufferer. Jenny believed it would be an excellent time to visit her daughter in Colorado, and I agreed. The conference ended on Friday afternoon, and some of us planned to eat supper and socialize that evening. We were able to obtain a seat at a really beautiful restaurant, and the Wagyu strip and creamed spinach were excellent. My flight wasn't until noon the next day, so I was in no hurry to leave the steakhouse. Besides, the Hilton was only a few minutes away, so I decided to get another drink and phone Jenny. My gin and tonic had just arrived, and I was ready to speed phone Jenny's number. When I noticed a couple being led to a table not far from mine, I observed as the waiter held the chair for the lady, and she seated. I'm not sure how women can sit when their gowns are so tight they can hardly breathe, let alone move. The dress always seemed to rip at the seams whenever the wearer bent and attempted to sit. That was the situation here. I was astounded at her ability to sit, as well as the fact that one small string held the top of her garment from dropping down. Spaghetti straps, I believe it's called. Then I watched as the gentleman beside her reached across the table and took her hands. I couldn't hear what they were saying, but she laughed at almost everything he said, so it had to be humorous. I took a few swallows of my drink, but couldn't focus on it. They ordered wine and then food. I sat and watched. The waitstaff kept checking in to ask if I needed anything, and suggested that they could borrow my table. I decided to depart while the couple was halfway through their dinner. I paid my bill, stepped outside, and requested the doorman to order me a taxi. He signaled, and one materialized almost magically. I'd like you to be in a position to see everyone that leaves the restaurant. I want to be able to follow them in whichever direction they go. Can you do that? You certainly can. But I need to keep the meter going while we wait. He said, "That's fine." He parked in an alley across the street, where we sat and watched. It was around 9:30 when I took out my phone. In Colorado, it was 8:30. It's still early enough to contact Jenny. "Hello, sweetheart. How about Nashville?" I asked. "Not bad. I am glad the seminar is ended. I was thinking about driving through Memphis tomorrow, spending dinner with the kids, and returning home on Sunday. What are your thoughts?" I think it's lovely that you want to do that, but not tomorrow. Ty and Madge decided to come out here for the weekend because Lauren and some of her coworkers are assisting with the office relocation. We talked for around 15 more minutes before hanging up. We sat there, waiting. When the couple walked out, the driver was playing a phone game. That is them. I instructed the driver and indicated. They had only been standing there for a minute when a black limo came to a stop. They got inside. We followed, and I noted the license plate number. They didn't travel far. In reality, they visited my hotel. They exited and walked inside. I paid the driver and followed. I arrived in the lobby just in time to see them board an elevator and come to a stop on the same floor. My room was on. I walked back out to the doorman. "Who was the couple in the limousine? Is anybody famous?" "Not that I know of," he responded. I took out my wallet and held out a $100 cash to him. "Can you find out?" "Not for that." "I can't," he answered, pointing to the bill. I took off another one and waited, then another. I began to put them all back in my wallet, and he reached for them. "I'll be right back," he answered. He was gone for around 5 minutes before handing me a piece of paper. I strolled inside and took the elevator before looking at the paper. Dominic Lafazio and his wife. Room 912. I got off the elevator. Room 912 was on the left. I turned right into 936, which was my room. I stood at the window, looking out and wondering what Lauren was doing in room 912. I wasn't sure when I initially saw them walk in, but as I observed them and looked at her, my reservations evaporated. It was her, and it answered some of the questions I had recently asked. I went to the minibar and mixed myself a gin and tonic. I grabbed my phone and looked up private investigators in Nashville. There were many of them. I looked till I found one that read call 24 hours. So I did. Less than an hour passed. I opened my door to a middle-aged couple who introduced themselves as investigators and invited them in. They declined my offer of a drink, so we talked. I told them I wanted to find out everything I could about Dominic Lafaso. I informed them the room number and provided them the limo's license plate number. Then we discussed money. "When do you want us to start?" "Right now." "Too soon." I gave them a credit card. They took the information they needed and then left. I had meant to leave tomorrow, but instead decided to stay until Sunday. I went to bed and attempted to fall asleep. I spent the majority of the next morning sitting in the lobby, hoping not to be recognized. I rescheduled my flight to Sunday afternoon. Shortly before noon, they exited the elevator, walked outside, and boarded the limousine. I walked down the street, ate lunch, and was waiting in the lobby when they arrived 5 hours later and used the elevator. I sat there for the remainder of the day and never saw them again. One of the investigators called me the next morning as I was on my way to the airport. She wanted to give me an update. We met at the airport and she gave me the envelope. There is some information about Mr. Lofaso. There are also photos and video. The images are rather simple, but the video is not the same. You paid the doorman to get some Lafarge. Zossa's name enabled us gain access to their room yesterday while they were out, so we could install our equipment. We reasoned that if he took your bribe, he may also take ours. And he did. He was able to find us a lodging near to Lafazio, where we could observe and capture what happened. The doorman is somewhat shady, and actually wanted a copy of the film for his personal watching pleasure. We have been in this business for a long time, but this is the first time we have been able to book a Hilton hotel, so we felt ourselves lucky. The limo is a standard for hire vehicle, no more than a luxury taxi. We have contacts throughout town who help us acquire information. Fortunately, the limo driver is one of those contacts, so the most of the photos are from while they were in his car yesterday. The information about Lafaso is far from full. He's from Memphis and comes here every few months, always with a girl. The female he's with this weekend has previously dated him. We will gather information about her and get it to you. Don't worry about her. I would, however, ask you to keep an eye on him. Stay with him the next time he comes into town and let me know. I said, "We'll do." He constantly requests for the same driver, so this should be simple. We talked for a few more minutes before I needed to go through security. I was a little nervous about going through security with the video. I was praying they wouldn't choose me for secondary screening and discover an explicit video about me. I fought the impulse to open the package since I didn't want anyone staring over my shoulder. I got home by 6 o'clock. A minute later, I opened the envelope. Apparently, there is a network of detectives that share information. When my detectives spoke with their limo driver contact, they discovered Lofaso was from Memphis. So they called their contact there, who was more than eager to give them the lowdown on him. Dominic Lofaso was a dentist who was married and had 4 children. He was well known as a philanderer, yet he was extremely picky. He and 4 other men in Memphis were at a club. I experienced a lot of intimacy. Club. Their rules were straightforward, personal, early, and intimate. Often, the women they had affairs with were married, so they had as much to lose as the men if they were discovered. And the guys were always required to have more than one lady. Not at the same moment, but they always needed more than one person to rely on for closeness. Lofaso now had at least 2 ladies. He had affairs on a consistent basis. He supposedly took advantage of every opportunity to screw around, but preferred to do so in Nashville. To explain his frequent absence from town, he cited dental seminars and fraternity members' golf outings. I took a little hiatus. This guy desired closeness solely for pleasure. My first instinct was that he was a slime ball, but then I realized, who doesn't enjoy intimacy? Humans are the only animals who do this, so far as we know. But he was married. He had affairs with married women. One of them was my stepdaughter-in-law. I picked up the photos, which showed some kissing in the back seat, an exposed chest. Relatively moderate, yet adequate to prepare any regular husband for divorce court. I then viewed the video. When the detectives returned to the hotel yesterday afternoon, they had planted their equipment. They walked in the room. Lauren approached the window and opened the drapes as far as they would go. She then switched on the radio to a country station. Jenny and I enjoy country music, which Ty and Lauren frequently criticized. Neither of them loved it, so I was astonished when she began swaying to it. Lofaso had taken off his jacket and was sitting on the edge of the bed, removing his shoes. She got down on her knees and assisted him remove his shoes. "Do you want to love me now?" she asked. "I need to shower. I'm all sweaty after being dragged throughout town." "Okay, I will join you in a minute. I should call Ty." She sat in a chair by the desk. "You call on Jesus Christ 6 times a day." "I have to keep him happy and dumb," she said. "Hello, sweetheart. Sure, I am fine. And you? How is Madge?" "Good." "What am I doing?" "We've just done eating. I ate a hot dog. In fact, I can still taste it in my tongue." And so it continued till the fatso stepped out of the shower, still drying himself. He approached Lauren and immediately inserted himself in her mouth mid-sentence. She waited for a few seconds before turning her head and letting him go. "Sorry, honey. I can't get the flavor of that hot dog out of my tongue. I absolutely enjoy it." They spoke for a few more minutes until she said her goodbyes. After hanging up the phone, Lofaso stood there and spoke with Ty. She turned, looked up at him, smiled, and prepared for love. They were napping and realized they were hungry, so they called room service. "So, will you give him a treat when he comes?" "I do not know. Did the last one like it?" she asked. "Yes, he enjoyed it." Who would not? You opened the door without wearing anything. They evaluated the advantages and disadvantages of exposing herself to the delivery guy. When the knock came, Lofaso entered the bathroom, partially closed the door, and peeked out as Lauren approached the door. She winked at him before opening the door. The young man paid no attention to her as he placed the tray on the table and checked everything off his list, verifying that what they ordered was correct. He then proceeded to the door, opened it, and exited. Lofaso emerged from the bathroom, and they exchanged surprised glances before laughing together. Lauren gave him a little tug, implying that it could have been more successful if you had done it. The rest of the video was essentially the same. I stopped looking at her as a lovely woman, and instead saw her as my stepson's wife, the mother of his daughter, and the woman who called her husband while she was with another man. She wasn't as appealing anymore. My telephone rang. It was Jenny. "Hi. We just landed, and I'll be home shortly. Have you eaten? I'm not really hungry. I'll just have a peanut butter sandwich." "That seems nice to me. See you shortly." I returned everything to the envelope and put it in my car. Jenny and I enjoy sitting together and being close after being apart for a spell. That evening, we sat on the sofa and discussed our individual weeks. There was a pause in our talk. She tried to say something twice, but stopped herself. I did not push her. Later in bed, we made love slowly and gently, like we always do, and I fell in love with my wife all over again. On Tuesday, I got a call from my Nashville investigators. Mr. Hansen, we understand you told us not to bother with the woman Lofaso was with in Nashville, but we have some information. One of our detectives was observing as he and the woman exited the hotel on Sunday morning. He got into the limo, but she got into a car that the valet had provided. We obtained her license plate number and checked it. The vehicle is registered to Tyson Wagner in Memphis. He's married to Lauren Wagner. And get this, she works for Lofaso. We tried to figure out why they traveled separately and concluded that they didn't want to risk being noticed. Okay, I appreciate the update. I'll phone your Memphis contact and ask him to keep a watch on both of them. We've already talked with him. He has your name and phone number and will contact you during the remainder of the week. Was relatively normal. If you ignore the fact that I still believe Jenny had something to tell me, but was hesitant. Finally, on Thursday evening, she spoke up. We were in bed, reading, when she started. I believe Ty and Lauren are having troubles. Why do you believe that? Did he say anything last weekend? I asked indirectly. He did explain that he had volunteered to assist her and the office staff with the relocation, but she quickly responded that they preferred to do it themselves, and that it would be an excellent opportunity for him to visit his sister. Is this all? I asked. It's just that she doesn't want to go any place with him and Madge. She keeps insisting she wants to stay at home. There is nothing wrong with that. I said no, but remember 3 months ago when he and Madge came here, Lauren couldn't attend because she was scheduled to train a new employee, and her boss preferred that the training be done on the weekend rather than while patients were present. The day before he drove down here, he had her automobile serviced and cleaned. The day after he returned home, he noticed one of her tires was underinflated. So, before going to work, he took it to add air to the tire while airing it. He noted that the automobile was dirtier than it should have been after just being washed, and there were a couple of fast food bags inside. Lauren only eats that garbage while they are traveling. So he checked the mileage against the invoice from when he had it serviced, and it had over 500 miles. That is unusual, especially when she was scheduled to work all weekend. Has he asked her about it? No, she responded. Why not? I pressed. He was terrified to. He honestly isn't sure he wants to know. She paused. That is not all. He called me on Monday morning. He and Madge returned home late Sunday from our trip to Colorado, and Lauren was in the living room with a glass of wine. She explained that she had just took a bath because she had been sweating all day while helping to relocate the workplace. He removed her soiled clothing from the bathroom hamper and took them to the washing room. Along with the clothes he and Madge had brought to Colorado. He was going to wash them, and as he went through them, he couldn't locate anything that looked like what she would generally wear when moving office furniture. No pants or shirts, only skirts, blouses, and dresses. Why didn't you inform me about this when he called? I asked. He asked me not to. You had previously expressed concern about her not coming with them, and he did not want to add fuel to the fire. Does he have any idea what's going on and what he can do about it? I said no to both. Again, he is unsure if he wants to know. He has to do something. I was about to tell her what I knew, but decided not to. After listening to Jenny, the first decided to speak with Lauren directly and tell her what I knew. Then, see what happens. Jenny and I talked for a few more minutes before falling asleep. She and Ty spoke multiple times during the next few weeks. He decided to give Lauren some time and see what happens. Jenny warned him not to give her too much time. I had also been speaking with the Memphis investigators. Apparently, Lofaso had returned to Nashville with another woman. She was married to the mayor of a tiny town near Memphis. The Hilton doorman once again provided the detectives in Nashville with camera footage. He apparently asked for a copy of that video in the same way he asked for Lauren's. He informed the investigators that he would no longer participate unless he obtained a copy of everything they did moving forward. I also informed my manager that I would likely be taking a Friday off in the near future. Jenny told me that there had been some development with Ty and Lauren. Things appear to be getting better. Maybe, I thought, but wait till it's her turn in Nashville. That happened all too quickly. The following week, Ty called Jenny and informed her that Lauren had been picked to attend a conference in St. Louis the following weekend. Her boss paid for it. She was delighted, and he was proud of her. I informed my employer, and I was granted permission to be off on Friday. I also informed Jenny that I'd be in Nashville for the weekend. She assumed it was for business, and I did not tell her otherwise. Since Lauren will be gone for the weekend, why don't you check if Ty and Madge can come down? A good idea. I'll phone him now. On Friday morning, I flew to Nashville and met with my investigators. Jenny and I arranged for Ty and Madge to fly to New Orleans. Welcome back, Mr. Hansen. Everything is ready for you. They arrived at the hotel approximately 2 hours ago and have been having sex since. We struck a deal with our favorite doorman, and the cameras are rolling. He won't get copies of our videos, but he will get more money. Good. Let's head to my room. Yes, sir. We sat in my room for a few hours. I began watching the live feed from the room next door, but stopped after a few minutes. LaFaso and Lauren eventually left late in the afternoon to eat. As soon as they left, my detectives took their equipment from Faso's room, and I contacted Lauren. They'd been out of the room for less than 15 minutes. Hello, Pat. What up? I am Lauren. I'm on the 8th story of the Hilton, room 837. You should come and chat to me. You should have no problem finding it. It is right near to 835. The room you were in when in love with Dominic LaFaso. Be here in 15 minutes. I ended the call. The film had been loaded into my computer, and I had been alone in the room for 16 minutes when she knocked. I opened the door. Both of them stood there. I stood aside as she entered the room. He started entering as well. I threw him back and shut the door. I turned to Lauren and simply looked at her. What will happen now? She asked. It's up to you. What do you mean? She asked. You can either leave this room and out of Ty and Madge's lives, or I can show him the footage of you and that jerk. Video, she questioned. I stepped to my computer and pressed the button. It quickly revealed Lauren on her back, with La Forza at her side. She tried to stop it, but I grabbed her hand. It continued. She tried again to stop it. I allowed her. She sank on a chair, looking up at me. I can't simply walk away. I need to talk to Ty. Why didn't you speak with him before you chose to cheat? Silence. Ty and Madge are at my home. You return to Memphis right now. Pack your belongings and leave. You write Ty a letter telling him you no longer want to be married. You don't speak with him or Madge. And you don't glance back. Don't I even have an opportunity to apologize? She asked. No, I roared. I can't leave Madge. I will not abandon her. Maybe. Pat. Maybe Ty and I can figure things out. I will quit. I will be a decent wife. I won't cheat again. Can you do it, Lauren? Could you be a loyal wife? The last time you were here, I watched you make love to LaFaso. Then you joked with your husband about how much you enjoyed the taste of the hot dog you had just eaten. You humiliated him and laughed about it. If you just go away, I won't tell him about you and LaFaso, and he'll think you simply didn't want to be married anymore. But if you fight me on this, I will make sure everyone you know sees the vids. Oh my God, did you see that? She asked. Yes. For the first time since entering the room, she began to cry. I apologize. Pat. I'm so sorry. We sat silently. Her phone was in her purse, and we heard it ring. She stared at me. I nodded. She unlocked the purse, pulled out her phone, and spoke. Go home. Dominic. It is over. The phone slid back into her purse. I will do it, Pat, but I need money. Ty will return home Monday afternoon. This will give you enough time to withdraw half of the money from your accounts. Your automobile is paid for, right? Yes, she responded. Is it under your name? I asked. Yes, she answered. Then you should have no issues. You will have money, personal belongings, and transportation. Ty will never know. You cheated on him, and Madge will soon forget you even existed. She stood up and began to leave. Is your car key in your purse? Yes, she responded. Go straight to your car and depart. Do not return to that jerk or the room. Understand? She nodded and left the room. I packed and proceeded to the airport. I was in my car in New Orleans, almost home, when my phone rang. I noticed who was calling. What do you want, Lauren? I will not do it, Pat. I won't and can't go without talking to Ty. No, I will not abandon my daughter. The worst case scenario for me is that he divorces me, but I'll still be able to see Madge. I will not give it up. You can tell anybody you want, but I'm not leaving until I speak with Ty. What if I distribute copies of the movies to your family and friends? Are you willing to face their criticism and scorn? They will avoid you. You know they will judge you and call you an unfaithful spouse, among other things. We'll talk to Ty, and seeing Madge will make it worthwhile. Madge is my daughter. She may detest me for a while, but she will eventually forgive and love me again. What about Ty? I asked. I do not know. He may hate me forever and never love me, but I have to convince him that what I did was not his fault and that he did nothing to deserve it. My need for intimacy, combined with the options Dominic Lofaso provided for intimacy, motivated me to do it. Are you sure you're doing it for him, not for yourself? It appears that you want to tell him more in order to ease your conscience rather than to persuade him that he did nothing wrong. No, Pat, no. It may sound like that, but that is not what I intended. Let me think about it. I will get back to you, I responded. I pulled into a park near my house and sat for more than an hour, contemplating. I called Lauren. Yes, Pat, you have a week, I responded. Jenny, Ty, and Madge were eating grilled hot dogs as I stepped out onto the terrace. Jenny and Madge gave me hugs and kisses. Ty shook my hand and handed me a hot dog. I rejected, informing him that I had lately grown to despise them and would probably never eat one again. We had a wonderful evening together. Jenny tucked Madge into bed and went herself. Ty and I drank some port and spoke. After a few glasses, I heard, Pat, may I ask a personal question? Of course, I responded. Why did you divorce your first wife? The basic answer is that we simply grew apart during the early years of our marriage. We did everything together and shared the same goals, and we had our daughter, Barbara. Over time, we simply grew apart. I learned to enjoy country music, whereas she preferred classical. She wanted to go to the theater, whereas I preferred to watch TV. I like working with wood, and she despised sawdust, and on and on. When we initially got married, everything revolved on us doing this or going on vacation as a couple. But over time, it became, I want to do this for my vacation, or I want to do it for me. We awoke one morning, shook hands, and said our goodbyes as friends. We are still friends and talk frequently. We do still love each other to some extent. She and your mother get along and are amicable with one another. Whenever we visit Cincinnati, we eat supper with her and her husband. Has either of you ever cheated? I never did. So far as I know, she didn't either, I responded. What would you have done if she had? There it was, the opening. Lauren was going to be toast, and I would be the toaster. I was going to tell him that there was never a justification to cheat, but for some reason, I did not say it. I wasn't Ty, and what was good for me might not be right for him or Madge. He was going to have to make the decision, not me. What will happen if he forgives her this time? And later on, someone else provides her with the same possibilities she had in Faso. Will she cheat again? A cheater who has cheated before will continue to cheat. That's what I've always heard. I have no idea. I suppose at first, I would have wanted to kill her, him, or both, but I believe I would have wanted to know why. What did I or did not do to trigger it? Had there been any way I could have avoided it? Any number of questions would have to be addressed. Would you have forgiven her? The $64,000 question. That is something I cannot answer. I can only tell that if she had cheated and I had found out about it and I had forgiven her, I would never, and I mean never, bring it up again. Because once you have forgiven someone, you cannot bring up the incident or event again. That does not imply you have to disregard it. Recall what Santayana stated. Those who are unable to recall the past are destined to repeat it. We sat silently for another half hour, sipping port. Finally, I stated, "It's been a long day. I am going to bed." We said goodnight. Ty and Madge headed for home the following Monday morning. Jenny and I talked briefly about our concerns about his marriage, but we mostly just liked being around each other. Ty called Jenny on Tuesday evening. Lauren appeared to have admitted that she had been having an affair with her supervisor for about a year. She asked for his pardon and pledged never to do it again. She advised they seek counseling and attempt to overcome her adultery for the sake of their marriage and family. Ty urged her to pack everything and leave, and she did. He had no intention of accepting her infidelity. Jenny approached and clutched to me, sobbing. "Did he do the right thing, Pat? I believe so. No one should have to live with a cheater." We sat, chatted, held hands, and hugged. She walked upstairs almost 1 hour later. As soon as she was out of earshot, I took out my phone. "Hello, Mrs. Lafaso. You don't know me, but I think you should watch a few of my videos. Thank you for listening to today's stories. If you enjoyed listening, please like and subscribe if you haven't done so already. Also, leave a comment below to share your thoughts on what happened. Take care."